Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe you're crazy. Maybe we're crazy. Probably. I know y'all remember that song. Popular hit back in the early 2000s. Listen. I kind of want to talk about something, okay? Because he was onto something. It's like, you see, back in the early 2000s, probably even before my time, there were things that people understood that they didn't have the words to articulate, right? And so then you kind of think about, okay, why so many people were on drugs, and it makes a lot of sense. Because people were experiencing things that they couldn't explain because there was a larger agenda at hand that was not being transparent about what exactly was going on. They were being fed crumbs about themselves individually, but then about the world around them as well. That would make anyone go insane, which is why I made a whole video that talked about how colonialism and imperialism was one huge and amazing social experiment, because it did really shape the entire interconnected web of how humans interact socially. We are social beings, and so that kind of conditioning for this entire race, human race as a species, well, it did what it did. Right? The outcomes are already recorded, but we're past that now. Now, what I want to focus on is this concept of addiction, leaning more back into drugs. Why was addiction so heavy? And when we talk about addiction, how it relates to trauma, how it relates to what we call addictive personalities, why some people have addictive personalities and others don't. What is addiction? There are many terms and definitions for what addiction is. You look it up on Google, it has its own. You ask a psychiatrist, they have their own. You ask a psychologist, they have their own as well. In the entire core framework of what addiction is, we know what it is, we know what it looks like, but where does it stem from? Addiction stems from attachment. When you are attached to something, you have this possibility, this potential to over consume it, to over love it, to obsess over it. And this imbalance creates an addictive cycle, a loop, right? We see addiction with many things. Many things. People can be addicted to tangible things, so inanimate things, money, clothing. But then people have addictions and they do things behavioral addictions, shopping, eating. So when you have an addiction to one thing, or an attachment to one thing, then your addictive tendencies are going to also show up in other things as well. So whatever you have an addiction to that is, or an attachment to something that is inanimate, for example, like you have an attachment to money, then you will have an addiction to something behaviorally, right? So, because what attachment is really just the grasp. And the grasp of something means at the core of it is love, but it's so far leaning to one side, it's heavily imbalanced, it becomes unhealthy. And this is where we get into the concept of toxic love, toxic relationships, right? Through obsession, and things of that nature, because of this idea of attachment. We don't want to let go. We don't know how to let go. And the longer that we hold on to it, the more that we kind of reinforce ourselves. Meaning, when we attach to something, it's through the heart first. And so if your heart is already growing into something outside of you, then when it's taken away from you, it's going to feel like you're departing. You're taking a piece of yourself away from it. It's going to feel like you're departing from yourself. And that's where this detachment can be so excruciatingly painful for some, when they've learned to externalize their heart into something outside of them. They've resourced their energy to something outside of them instead of within. And on that note, I would like to point out the fact that this is something that we can understand more deeply in Asian cultures. In Asian tradition, like with the Buddhists and monks, they have no attachment. One of their core beliefs, and I don't know what it says exactly, but I know that it's to release attachment. Because when you are not attached to anything, that means you don't own anything, and therefore nothing owns you. And in these traditions, like the Buddhists, for example, they are not attached to anything. Their way of life is living through being, through presence, right? Monks, they're highly disciplined, but they're also highly connected, and not to anything outside of them, but to themselves, and to the things that nature provides, right? And so I just kind of want to highlight those factors of what addiction is, where it comes from, this idea of attachment, and why I made the video that attachment is an illusion. I don't think that attachment is bad. I don't believe that it's bad. But knowing yourself is the first requirement before you can actually, I guess, attach. But even when you do know yourself so much, like you have a self-realization, you have a grounded understanding of self, you wouldn't even want to attach to anything. You wouldn't. And that's the whole thing. So to kind of counteract these things called attachment and addiction would mean addiction being the most extreme part, where it's that behavioral part of attachment, addiction. You would need to depart not only from the substance or the thing, the behavioral aspect of what you're attached to first, but then the second thing would be to literally detach yourself from the thing that you are attached to internally, externally. What that could look like is someone could be attached internally, that they've placed their heart somewhere. Let's say it's in a substance, right? Someone has their heart in a substance, so they abuse it, right? They have placed external love into a substance, and so now the behavioral is now addiction. It's addictive because people desire love. People love love, right? When you put your heart into something, you attach to it. It's because you love this thing, but then your behavior begins to act erratically in obsessive ways that end up harming either it or yourself, or both, depending on what it is, of course. And so to kind of undo that, it's like retracing your steps. The behavioral part of it, you'd want to start there. At times, people can't stop with the behavior until they understand where their heart is at. And when they understand where their heart is at, they have to understand why it's that way. And even in those two circumstances, when they understand why and what, it still is very difficult to stop the behavior itself. Because the last part of that is just a decision. It's a making, and it's a process too, because it's not just making it the decision, the choice to stop, especially if it's something that goes on over time. It's been happening for a long time. Instead, it's something like it has to process into the person, and that could take double the amount of time that the person started this. There's no telling. And so the decision is not up to the person at that point. It's up to the body, and how the body and the mind and the heart itself can learn to ease up slowly. You can't force anyone to do what it is that you want them to do, because rehabilitation isn't about time. It's about patience. Patience with the person, and also having the person be patient with themselves. But also the will to know that it's coming. So, yeah, with that being said, guys, I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you guys understood it as well. If you enjoy this, let me know with a thumbs up. And yeah, let me know your thoughts. And yeah, thank you for listening. I will catch you guys next time.